more productive. Number 9, these folks we have in leadership should control outputs and outcomes, but they spend most of their time looking at inputs. I alluded to this, in fact, I said it before, in manufacturing, we control the inputs. If we control the inputs and we do everything correctly, we come out with a good product. So that's what you should do in manufacturing, but it's not what you should do in knowledge work. Knowledge work in software development is in the complex realm. You could control the inputs all day long, but that doesn't mean you're going to get the outputs and the outcomes that you want. So it's much better to control, or try to control, or at least understand what are the things that we wish from the system? What are the outputs we wish to gain? What are the outcomes we wish to achieve? And then vary the inputs. This is my problem with my friends in PMO groups. The PMO has a tendency to put together these big, thick books of rules that they call governance. And the problem with governance is if we treat everything the same, as far as inputs, how are we going to get any different output? I mean, we're almost making the assumption that we've got the holy grail and answer to how we do things. Agile and working with Scrum teams, and the experience I've had and what I coach on a daily basis is I don't want my Scrum teams all doing the same thing. I want them experimenting. I want them trying. I want them to look for different ways of doing things. I do not believe in best practices. I believe in good practices. Best practices is the tombstone you die at, because you won't get any better. So we should look for and allow for a variability of inputs, and we should know our success by measuring the outputs and the outcomes. I know this from experience. The job I was recently working, they created models, data models, AI, whatever you want to call it, where they would do some wonderful things with images, and they could spot certain things, and et cetera, and it was great work they did. And when I joined the team, I said, how many of these have we delivered to our customer? Answer was 0. Because they were looking at the input. They were looking at, wow, we've created all these wonderful things, but they didn't look at the output or the outcome. What has this actually done for us? They delivered, as far as I was concerned, 0 value for 2 years worth of work. If our outputs are correct, we can assume to a certain extent that our inputs are correct. But here's the thing about the complex world, it never stays done anyway. It's always constantly changing. This is one of the reasons why in Agile, and particularly Scrum, we have ceremonialized feedback. Because in the complex world, in order to be successful, you need to have fast, accurate, and actionable feedback. So just because we get the outputs and outcomes we want doesn't mean that we still don't continue to evolve and change. Number 10, and getting to the end, and I'm looking at time, so that's we'll have some time for questions and answers, it looks like, if you have any. Number 10, and I think this is one my bean counters like me for, fewer people, sometimes in the knowledge-based world, equals more productivity. That's counterintuitive as well. And the reason being is, in the complex world, as I just alluded to, you need to have feedback. And most of the feedback that we have in software development and most other knowledge work is people talking to each other. They're communicating with each other, whether it be email or text or Zoom or whatever. The number of communication channels changes dramatically. I don't know what happened to my people. There's my people. I don't know why they go off my slide. If I have 4 people, I have 6 lines of communication. It's n times n minus 1 over 2. If I double the number of people, I don't double the number of communication channels. If I have 8 people, I have 8 times 7 divided by 2, which is 28 lines of communication. So any incremental change that adding a person to the system as far as productivity would exert on the system is overswamped by the need for the communication among the people within the system. So that's why my slide is messed up and my people run away from me. Brooks' Law, we talked about that earlier. Talked about feedback, there's studies that show, the one that I have in class, I forget, I think it's QSM Consulting. And I've been talking about this one for years. They studied large software teams versus small software teams on projects of the same size. And the small teams were 5 or fewer people, and the large teams were actually 20 or more people, which seems really crazy to me as an Agilist. The 20 or more people teams completed the projects at an average of 9.12 months, and the small teams that were 5 or fewer completed in 8.96 months. So you're basically paying 4 times the amount of money to gain a couple weeks on a 9-month project. Because what happens in the knowledge-based world is it's about communication and collaboration. It's not about digging ditches or banging on a keyboard. If banging on a keyboard made one a good programmer, I'd be a great programmer. I could bang on the keyboard with the best of them. It's not the physical act. So adding more people doesn't necessarily move things through the system. In fact, in some cases, it actually slows things down because of the need for communication. The things that are most important for the productivity of knowledge-based workers and software development teams are the environment, the location, the processes and systems, as we talked about, and the talent of the people on the team. Who are they? Where are they? What are they capable of doing? Have we given them what we need, basically?